colleagues and speakers in that. We have 4 poster presentation online and 1 on site, so altogether 5. And the timeline that you have 5 minutes for presentation, and then we have 10 minutes for discussion and questions, and then we go further. And after presentation, you can just raise a hand to ask questions, or we can make 1 minute to discuss with each other. And you can speak on site. They hear us. You don't need any microphone or. Okay, and we ask the presenter to keep the time limit 5 minutes. We can't review that it's time is up. And Erik, is that first one? Erik, please, lower yours. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to start Erik's video now.
Good afternoon. My name is Erik Hultman. I am an associate professor in electrical engineering at Uppsala University. My research and teaching is focused on industrial robotics, often applied in projects related to renewable energy and electromobility. Here at the Enlight Teaching and Learning Conference 2024, I am happy to present and discuss an initial evaluation of my pedagogical development work aiming to promote and foster creativity and innovation. For more than 10 years now, I've been teaching a course in automation and robot engineering at Uppsala University. This course has been remodeled through 2 pedagogical development projects initiated in 2012 and 2020, and the outcome presented and evaluated in 2 previous conference publications, which you can find by scanning the 2 QR codes that will now appear here after each other, or later from the poster itself. An important part of our developed teaching approach is to achieve a creative and innovative learning environment. In the presented work, the students' experience on creativity aspect of the course is for the first time evaluated specifically and in detail, by adding an extra part to the written end course evaluation of the latest course occasion. The investigated course is structured around real-world project tasks taken directly from our research in robotics. At the beginning of the course, the students form project groups around different manual assembly tasks and assign their own robotized solutions to these tasks. We encourage the students to be creative when designing their solutions. After this initial theoretical pre-study, the students go on to practice on the project tasks through lab exercises with the equipment developed in our research. Here, a non-instructive lab approach with plenty of time and supervisors present is used. The students are encouraged to test and fail before finding their own solutions to the lab exercises. Thereafter, the students rework their own design based on the lab experience and additional theory presented at the course. 9 students out of 42 taking the course responded to the creativity survey. All replied on the 7 questions where different statements were rated on a 1 to 5 like-it scale, where 1 was defined as do not agree at all and 5 was defined as very much agree. 1 student also gave a free text comment. From the results we see that the students did feel much encouraged and saw very good opportunities to be creative during the course. See question 1 to 2 in the figure shown here. Most also considered themselves to have taken this creativity opportunity. Question 3 in the figure. The course itself, but in particular the project tasks, the lab exercises and the research connection were specifically considered to be important for developing creativity skills. See question 4 in the figure. From this initial study, it would be interesting to dig deeper into creativity in a more rigorous analysis and development work. Therefore, I have chosen the following 2 main topics to discuss here today. 1. When looking at the student evaluations only, we seem to have succeeded to promote creativity in the course. But how can we evaluate actual creativity skills? And 2. We are planning on implementing virtual reality technology to the course, given that VR tools are today integrated parts of modern production technology. Could this technology be utilized also to further practice and promote creativity? Finally, I would like to acknowledge Uppsala University for funding the presented work, and also Dana Sallar and Mats Ekberg for supervising the lab exercises and projects during the investigated course occasion. Thank you for your attention. Welcome to come with questions and also to discuss with me around the subjects lifted in my presentation.
We do so that maybe we do a couple of minutes to discuss with each other. For example, some question that the presenter has, or what question you have in your mind, and then we can ask and discuss with Erik. Is it fine? Yeah. And if you do not have a partner, please find someone to discuss. Or maybe you have some old experience to share, how to develop or how to evaluate the cognitive skills or
They are the different sides of the same coin.
Would you like to have some ask something, or would you have some comments or
related?
share with Erik? But did you find some answer how to evaluate creativity task? Maybe someone has some nice example to share, or you have some questions? For example, would you like to share something?
Well, I think this study was interesting. But I don't have any question. I think it was clear.
Yes, maybe you have some comments or ideas or your own experience. So.
Great insights. Thanks, Erik. But I think encouraging creativity, in general sense, is actually quite hard. So some people would really need an awful lot of confidence building that what they're producing is not bad and just simple. Nothing wrong with simple, because out of simplicity, complexity grows. So I think whenever you're trying to encourage creativity, you got to realize that some students will naturally have talents in that area, and others will need a lot of support. And to encourage them to start very simply. So it's just a kind of a general observation that I am. I teach something different, but there's a creative aspect to it. And to get students to perform there, I had to do quite a lot of encouragement, feedback, and scaffolding, and to make them believe in themselves.
Yeah, I agree. Erik, have you had a need to encourage your students? Like we heard here that it needs a lot of encouraging students to be creative or.
Thank you for the comment. I can say that the sound quality is not perfect, so I didn't hear everything, but I noticed the comment about simplicity, that it's a good idea to start simple, and I think that is something that I found as well. I think the students are a little bit afraid in the beginning when I tell them to be creative. They think that they will be evaluated on detailed and perfect answers in the projects that we have. But we encourage them a lot to use creativity and rather make simplifications when possible or when needed. So they come up with their own solutions and present to each other. So one challenge is to support them with sufficient theory in the beginning to be able to do these pre-studies that we use. And of course, you need to be very trained to do really good pre-studies. And we make the pre-studies in the beginning of the course, which means that we don't have much time to train them. So we really need to push simplicity and motivate creativity more over complexity, so to speak. So I agree with the comment that I heard, and I think that's a good point as well to make. Some students are a little bit afraid to go out in the uncertain, so to speak, and that is something we need to support them.
May I ask what kind of help you have needed to do such kind of task? as you as a teacher or lecturer need some extra training or to do such kind of course or apply such kind of teaching method?
We have more or less tried ourselves and worked at something, it's like kind of a method that works for us. In the beginning, we focused a lot on the projects and related the theory. We have a lot of lectures in the course in the beginning. We related more or less all of the theory during the lectures to the projects. And I was asking questions about the projects during the lectures, but we ended up finding out that a little bit too much. We shouldn't connect everything to the projects. Then we get a little bit, we miss some other parts that we need to do, or maybe we focus too much on it. And the students also get a little bit bored when being fed only with the project tasks and relating everything to the same tasks. So we actually took the step back. We talked about the projects in the beginning, introducing them, showing them physical things that they will need to handle in theory later on, early in the course. So they know what to do, but then we took a step back. We took the theory and then we asked the student to relate the theory to their projects. And we also had the supervision lectures where they can come and ask questions before writing a report, for example. So not relating the theory too much to the projects or to the creativity projects here was one key for us. Take one step back, go through the theory, and then let the students relate the projects to the theory instead.
Any other last comment?
I have a question here because Erik, you mentioned something like you tell the students to be creative. So I'm curious, has it ever occurred that students ask you like, what does it mean? And have you been in a position where you need to define creativity for these students, and what has your answer been?
Very good question. I've been thinking a lot about this as well. To be honest, I haven't got that question from the students. I think I've been thinking more about it myself than maybe the students. It would be interesting to investigate what they think creativity is and what, of course, I mean, what I presented here today is only a very short pre-study of something that I would like to dig a little bit deeper into. But when we ask the students if they think they have the opportunity to be creative or if they are creative, of course, it would be interesting to know what do they put into to creativity as well. What do they mean about creativity? So that's a very good question. I don't have a good question or a good answer for it, but it's something that I think a lot about, but perhaps maybe the student don't relate that much about. So maybe we should try and provoke that within the students' minds as well.
May I also ask one question? Erik, could you answer your first question? You listed
yeah. About how to evaluate creativity.
Yeah. Yes.
I've been thinking a lot about it. The problem here is that I don't have a pre and a post student group to compare with. Of course, I can relate to what do they know about creativity, or how do they practice creativity in the beginning of the course and at the end of the course. But also they learn a lot about the subject is robotics, and they learn about that. And learning about the subject means that they are more free to do their own solutions as well. So it's hard to really evaluate if they grow in creativity during the course. We could, of course, look into the student reports. We could look into the examination, but I don't have the student. Maybe I should have a control group then, where we not empathize creativity as much compared to the control group. But we don't have that for the moment. So it's hard. I don't have a good answer. If you have any good ideas, then I would be happy to take part of them. But I don't have a good answer of this. So far, it's only the student opinions that we have evaluated.
Your answer to that question, is it yes or no?
It's yes, I want to do it, but I don't have a very good, good idea about how.
Okay, thank you.
I have one suggestion, what I use. I had a course about creativity, but I do not use the word creativity. Because if you said be creative, then it's, oh, I can't do anything. And I avoided the word creativity, and it works very well. But thank you, Erik. Our time is over. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You can stay online and ask a question as well. Thank you. The next presentation is Inez. Inez, floor is yours.
I'll try to share my screen to have the presentation. I don't know. Can you see this?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Well, I'm going to try to give you a ride through the poster. So in this poster presentation, we explore the vital role of diversity-sensitive education in preparing future legal and criminology professionals. So by integrating diversity into curricula, institutions can enhance student engagement, promote inclusivity, and support academic success. And Ghent University exemplifies this through initiatives focused on aiding vulnerable students with diversity-oriented educational practices. So the DivScan 1.0 project was launched to promote diversity-sensitive education across our university. In the initial phase, we created a comprehensive tool for educators to reflect on their diversity-sensitive practices. This questionnaire addressed intrinsic motivations for integrating diversity, challenges in implementation, and how diversity is represented in course content. We also assessed classroom interactions, mentorship alignment with diversity principles, and fairness in student evaluations. So this was our reflection tool. And to gain deeper insights, we conducted focus groups with 21 students from various faculties, including international students. And their feedback revealed concerns about the need for open dialogue, gender-inclusive language, diverse perspectives in curricula, and better representation of real-world issues into the curricula, along with a focus on accessibility and transparency in course materials. So we use these insights to inform workshops for educators, encouraging reflection on biases while promoting collaborative strategies to enhance diversity-sensitive pedagogy. And building on this, the DivScan 2.0 project specifically targeted diversity-sensitive education in law and criminology. And student interviews shaped our focus on creating safe learning environments, incorporating diverse perspectives, and providing clear feedback. Based on this, we developed workshops for educators that emphasized respectful interactions and the integration of diverse viewpoints, especially regarding historical contexts like colonialism, while offering guidance on delivering constructive feedback that accounts for students' various backgrounds. And in its latest phase, the DivScan 3.0 project introduces an online course for educators in law and criminology, because we noticed that not a lot of educators were able to attend our workshops, and to make it more accessible for the educators. So we made an online course. And this online course reinforces themes of safety and support, emphasizing key components for educator-student interactions, such as connectedness, engagement, empowerment, and so on. Guidance for fostering community and respectful communication among students is also provided. And we also use the theme of multi-perspectivism in this course, with an emphasis on integrating diverse perspectives into learning objectives and inclusive feedback practices. So to make a conclusion, we had a few insights from our DeepScan project that aimed to foster diversity-sensitive education at university. It highlights, for instance, the importance of raising awareness among faculty about diversity-sensitive education. Equipping educators with the right tools and training is really crucial for effectively embedding diversity into the teaching practices. However, turning awareness into action can be really challenging, as we noticed, because many educators recognize diversity's importance, but actually face difficulties in implementation due to personal biases or due to time constraints or all stuff like that. So sustaining long-term engagement with diversity initiatives is essential to avoid tokenism and address structural inequalities meaningfully. So the initiatives show actually promise, but there remain a lot of challenges, and that's maybe an important point for discussion within this group is first of all, how do we engage educators to promote diversity-sensitive education and to follow the initiatives that we launch, because it's really difficult for them to attain to the diverse initiatives that we provide. So that's one question I want to address to you. And the second thing we noticed in our project is actually when we try to engage educators in our workshops and in our initiatives, we notice that we reach the educators that are already convinced of diversity-sensitive education, and it's very hard to reach people who know not a lot about it and who want to learn about it. So these are two points that which we encounter difficulties with. So I wonder whether you have some advice that can help for us to overcome this, because it's really, really difficult to reach the educators. It seems diversity-sensitive education seems not to be one of the first priorities of our educators. And I don't know if you encounter the same problems or if you have some advice for us to do it better.
Yeah, thank you, Inez. So maybe a couple of minutes to ask how the theme is in your country or in your university, and then you can maybe some good suggestion to Inez.
Mm-hmm.
You have a question right away?
Yeah.
Okay, we have one question right away.
Okay, Inez, I am from Ghent University, so I'm aware of the initiative. And I think it's very important, the diversity-sensitive education. I am from the Faculty of Medicine. And my question to you is, do you have at this moment, so you gave the example in the Faculty of Law and Criminology, do you have a generic training now, independent of context for the teachers on training on diversity-sensitive education, or do you always focus specifically on the context of the courses of the programs?
Yeah, we have launched our online course. Well, it's not launched yet. We are in the final stage, and we were asked from the general board of the university to make it a bit broad. So it's not really targeted to the Faculty of Law and Criminology alone. So we try to make it a little bit of a broad project, and it will be captured by the bigger picture at Ghent University.
And so it will be an e-learning module?
Yeah, it's an e-learning model. Yeah.
And is it in English?
It is in Dutch.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Diversity by fall.
Thank you.
Yeah, comments, right? Okay, but now shortly, 1-2 minutes, how the subject in your university? Maybe you have some comments or suggestion. Yeah.
Our university, we have universal design. We have PL, which is very of initiative. I'm part of the committee. So we are having lots of events for staff at the university, and not just academic staff, but research and administrative staff. So, for example, in a few months, we have a session on neurodiversities, how to supervise PhD students with neurodiversities problems. So it is already well embedded in every level.
How are the professors coming along? Because I understand it, Inez was also explaining that it's hard to.
You should have a real world exam. You cannot be general. You cannot just provide generic exam.
Yes, yeah. Would you like to share or comment something to Inez? Maybe have some suggestion or here?
Thanks, Inez. That was really interesting and thought-provoking. My question is, how does this relate to decolonizing the curriculum? And is introducing a diversified curriculum, like is it a top slice of decolonizing the curriculum, which seems to kind of go maybe a little bit deeper? I'm not sure. So that's a question I'm asking.
Well, in one of our workshops, we expressed the need to have multiple perspectives in our curriculum, and in this content, we tried to help educators to decolonize the curriculum and to give some advice to each other in the workshops. So we try to have attention to this.
I have a question. So here, I'm Mona from University of Galway. So do you have any equality, diversity, inclusion committee at the university level? Because at University of Galway, we have this committee at the university level, at the college level, and school. So we are all well involved and we are having many initiatives. So it's running, and it can be through different, for example, training sessions, even some workshops we are having. So it's a way of providing awareness to staff. And it doesn't matter, it's not just academic staff, but administrative staff and research staff. Or for example, on the other side, for example, those funding bodies that, for example, we are having, even if you are, for example, in Ireland, you are trying to apply for funding, even in your proposal, there are some sections about how inclusive your research is, or how you want to make sure that it is you know, equality, diversity, and inclusion principles. It kind of met through your project, and you cannot just be generic. You should be very specific. How, for example, through this workshop, by inviting this cohort of people. So
Yes, the question was, do you have some kind of committee in your?
Well, every faculty has his diversity committee, but it seems to me that it's not always very aligned to each other, and it's very hard to have a shared vision and shared initiatives and to work together. But it is available at university.
Okay. And the time is fortunately over. Thank you very much. The next presenter is Natalie. Natalie, the floor is yours.
Hello, can you hear me and see the presentation? Yes, it looks like it. So does that work? Okay. So welcome. Sorry that I cannot be there in person. So I'm representing the University of Bern here. I'd like to discuss today a course that I developed together with our technician, Peter Leiser, and my colleague, Bettina Scheffley. So the idea was to turn a field course in physical geography where students have to go to the mountains and make measurements into a more hands-on course. The problem with field courses, although they're fun and everyone likes them, is they can be somewhat exclusive to people who can hike up a mountain and carry a lot of equipment and take measurements and leave home for a week without problems. And also they tend to be somewhat touristy. So the students go somewhere, they make observation, there's somewhat passive learning often, and we wanted to sort of turn that around into a really hands-on learning environment. And so the idea was to take, and we had support from the University Innovative Learning Fund to do this. And the idea was to give each student an Arduino kit and see what they could come up with in terms of geosensors. And I just turn my poster into a PowerPoint. Let's see. Oh, oops. Okay. So we've offered this course twice now, this year and 2 years ago, and we had we organized it slightly differently. Here I've given the overall framework and then showed the changes. So there weren't many students either year. We had 11 students in 2022 and only 5 in 2024. That was maybe a communication error. And then we went from in both years, we had a pre-day in the spring and then a workshop at the end of summer. That was pretty key. It was somewhat an accident the first year due to my own maternity leave, and it ended up being one of the huge advantages of the course. I'll go more into detail that next. We had diverse students. This is key. These are non-technical students. They're geography students. They've been equally trained in social and physical geography. They might not have any programming skills or any knowledge of sensors. So we had a lot of learning that needed to happen in 1 week. The general learning objectives were that all students can ask scientific questions, that they can program a microelectronic kit, and they can communicate the data and results. We used a number of tools. One thing we changed between the 2 years was introducing design thinking as a more concrete learning objective. And then so those were the key things. And the other big change was the introduction of the learning journals. The key advantage of the course was the self-directed learning environment where we set up on our online learning platform, Ilias, we set up a learning platform that they could gain a foundation in Arduino. We're lucky because most of the 2 different microelectronic boards we did use have a ready-made self-learning kit. So we just adopted that to our learning platform. And then we also set up a place where they could generate and share ideas about what sorts of sensors they would make. And in this tool, there was also the place for their online learning journals, a forum, and then a library of literature that I have collected and photos I've collected for them to explore. So the idea is they would come into the workshop full of ideas and ready to ask a scientific question. In the course, which was an intensive week, both years, we tried to marry the process of developing the sensors. Again, they were totally free to pick their own sensor from their own scientific question, whatever they wanted, with the design thinking steps. And that was one of the main challenges of the course. Here's an example of some of the different sensors we had. We had different questions come out. We had different sensors, and then they had to develop the necessary software libraries, troubleshoot it, casing hardware, and gather their own data. And at the end of the course, they had presentations. And that worked, overall, that worked quite well. There were 3 main ways we checked that everyone was on track. Were the regular learning journals that were daily and during the self-learning period, informal check-ins as we transitioned between phases, and then group feedback sessions at different points in the course as well. So the lessons over those 2 years is that in both cases, we had this trade-off between structure and unstructured input and self-led activity that was sometimes hard to integrate. When for the students, it's hard to transition between that teaching environment, their frontal learning environment, to a more open-ended learning environment. And similarly, the switch from the technical learning to the creative learning was also a challenge. The structure of the design thinking, as we made it more structured, that helped students deal with those transitions. And again, the time management to leave room for more reflection was key to improving the course over the 2 years. One of the outstanding challenges is how to grade this creative process and the product. Are we grading the best sensor or the most risk-taking in sensor design or the best link to a physical geography question? What exactly are we grading? That was and the learning journals ended up being a really good improvement, but the tool we used in Ilias leaves room for improvement. We had pretty good feedback. As you can see, the negative feedback was pretty linked to some of those challenges I mentioned, that sometimes the switch between structure and unstructured, open-ended and concrete steps was challenging for students. In the future, we want to have more students and link it more to their master projects so that it's more tangible and more relevant, and make a number of technical improvements to arrive further at more usable sensors. But in general, we were quite happy with the program. And with that, I go back to my overall poster beginning, and thank you very much.
Maybe you have right away some questions to Natalie. Yeah, here.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think we should collaborate.
Oh, great. Who are you and what's your name? Can you?
My name is Renato. We teach Internet of Things here at the University of Tartu, and we do a lot of hands-on collaboration with forestry departments. And we have our own framework, which is free, open source, many sensors, very flexible, and we love to give our students some challenges. And also, so you should be a guest lecturer in our class, and we should collaborate.
Oh yeah, okay, send me an email so we can talk more.
In case context, any other comments? Very nice example how to apply this design thinking and design process in a teaching process. Some other comments? Thank you, Björn.
Hello, Natalie.
Hello.
Okay. Your students, they didn't have an electronics background, did they?
No, mostly not. If they did, it was self-taught.
Right. And it's just 1 week of Arduino training to get to.
No, so we had the whole summer. So they had from, in one year it was May and the other year was April to until August. We gave them this online, we distributed the kits in April or May, and then they spent all summer working with those kits and an online learning module to teach themselves Arduino. So they really liked that. They liked that they didn't have to do that in a course environment, that they could do it on their own. It worked a little bit better, I think, in 2022 because we were coming out of the pandemic. So people had more free schedules to do self-learning. Whereas I noticed this summer, the students all were juggling like 3 internships and all these other things they were doing this summer. So they were less fully available, but the online learning module was so concrete that they could just work through it whenever they had time over the summer. So that was actually really good. So they had 3 months to get the basics. But then they were just in that self-learning, they were just doing kind of step-by-step recipes to learn different functions of the Arduino kits and the basics of programming. Whereas in the workshop, they had to come up with a question and then design a sensor to go with it. So it was a pretty different process, but they had the toolbox from the summer. So that worked pretty well.
And were they being evaluated on scientific questions like the soil, CO2 over the soil, or were they being evaluated on their capabilities of designing the sensor?
So the evaluation was on their ability to design the sensor. It wasn't on the results they got in terms of the physical geography question. So if they, but that was one of the challenges for me. I'm not, was what exactly are we evaluating? And one, I can go to here, these actually are drawn from 3 different projects. So the students, and it was interesting. So the 3 different projects had quite different levels of risk. So the one in the upper left, he just made a sensor out of wires. And his idea was a snow wetness sensor. And it was a very risky project. He had no guidelines or no material. He went to a store we have here in Bern where he could buy like random materials and fabrics, and he tested all these fabrics. And his result wasn't so finished, right, in a week. But he took so much risk and it was so creative that it was hard not to give him a good grade. Whereas there was another group that made this temperature humidity sensor that you see over grass there. And that was sort of a low risk sensor. I mean, everything, they took the temperature humidity sensors that we had and they stuck them in those, and okay, they responded to the question by putting them in different places, and that was interesting, and they fulfilled the objective, but they took almost no risk, right? And then the CO2 sensors, which you can see here in the lower left, they really built their own little chamber, and they sort of reinvented the wheel in terms of why they need a chamber to do a CO2 measurement, and they needed to put a fan in there, and theirs was in between in terms of the risk, and that I would say out of these 3 was the most successful, in that they got real measurements that meant something, and they also were very creative in their approach and took a lot of risks. I mean, a fair amount of risks. But I found this really hard to grade because it's really like apples and oranges. The group with who took the lowest risk fulfilled the objectives the best. They had really clear physical geography results, whereas the person who made his own sensor from wires, I mean, his data isn't so clear. He didn't calibrate so well, but he really did something totally innovative. And I don't know how to grade that,
I think that evaluation is a separate topic already. But thank you, Natalie, and have a nice operation. We start to okay, thank you. The author.
Yes.
Sorry, my mistake. Sorry. All right, and we do the last one. Next we. We string a red and then you have one. All right, Hannah. The floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. My name is John, and I'm a researcher at Ghent University. And today I will talk about the positive impacts of deepfake technology in teaching and learning. Let's start with the basics. What is a deepfake? Deepfake is an audio, video, or photo that is edited or created by a generative AI system. And despite it is fake, it can look very realistic, or it can look the way you actually desire. And why should we include such content and technology in teaching and learning? I would argue that this technology has the potential to enhance education because deepfake can be a more engaging, visual, interactive, and personalized educational material. Also, limited research suggests that the use of generative AI in education can create novelty effect and increase the performance of the learners. Moreover, vision is our most dominant sense, and people tend to pay more attention to the visual information than other sensory information. And because of this, I think deepfake can be more engaging and interactive educational material. Additionally, I think deepfake can stimulate creativity because it can reduce the gap between content and idea. And lastly, we need to think about job markets needs. More and more companies and industries are integrating generative AI into their work, meaning that they will need workers who are familiar with this technology. So we need to integrate deepfake into teaching and learning. And how can we do that is another question. And here I don't have a theoretical answer. I will provide you with some deepfake projects with the hope that you can draw some inspiration from them and integrate deepfake into teaching and learning experiences. For instance, John F. Kennedy's Silence Project created audio deepfakes of John F. Kennedy's undelivered speech, the speech that he couldn't deliver because of his assassination. And I think such use is a great tool for history education. Similarly, Salvador Dali Museum created deepfakes of Salvador Dali. Dali talks about his work and art in a very interactive way. And I think this can create a very rich museum experience. Also, deepfake is a great tool for any kind of message, delivering any kind of message. And I would argue that giving your students to creating a, for instance, campaign, an advocacy campaign with a deepfake can be an idea. For instance, this climate does not exist project illustrates how anywhere would look like with the impacts of climate change. And lastly, deepfake is a great tool for creativity, as I mentioned, be that art or advertising. Like just let your students create art or advertising with deepfakes. So in conclusion, I think deepfake is a great tool for education, learning, and teaching. Thanks a lot for having me. And if you have
Like that. Yeah, okay, so I have to admit that I'm conflicted about use of deepfakes in education. I would make the point that I think that as educators, if we use deepfakes, we have to flag it very clearly. One. Second thing, I think that deepfakes can be useful for exploring hypotheticals, for example, exploring scenarios where access to real image is impossible. What might Mars have looked like a billion years ago when it was water on it? Things like that. Or if it was water, if it was water on Jupiter, what would it look like? Hypotheticals like that. I have to say that if I was an unethical educator and I was stuck for an image, to illustrate a point that I didn't fully understand, I could use a deepfake, which would be an unethical thing to do. But so that's why I think that whenever we use images in a teaching, we have to provide the sources, and if we're using deepfakes, we have to provide the source and the query that we used to produce it in the first place. But so even though I'm conflicted, I kind of accept your perspective on this. Thank you. Very interesting.
Thanks a lot for the question. And also, I mean, it was difficult to put everything in a 3 minutes, obviously, presentation, but I completely, heartfully agree with everything that is mentioned, because using deepfakes also creates issues when it comes to, especially like depicting real persons. Then it creates issues of data protection, intellectual property, privacy, and also consent. And another layer is definitely like we really need to make sure that students understand that that's a deepfake. And unfortunately, even though we thought that students are digital natives and we think that they can easily distinguish synthetic content, as the research says the contrary, they also struggle. So we really have to make sure that like they understand that we are using a synthetic content. But I would also argue that we also have to prepare them for this information disorder, because deepfakes, the biggest concern about it is its weaponization for this and misinformation, and maybe using deepfakes for education is definitely is a good idea in education, especially when we watermark and show that it's a deepfake. Maybe it will increase their awareness about this technology as well. But I heartfully agree on concerns.
And the application of deepfake to climate change, I found it really interesting, the possibilities of it. In Galway, we are also seat, and there is a line, it's a neon line on one of the buildings that's quite close to the water to show us where we'll be in 50 years' time. But I think a big problem that confronts us and students, but society as a whole, is a lack of imagination of what climate change is actually going to look like. And I think it could be really interesting if people could envisage what their area will look like if we have 2 people, 1 people, 5, or whatever it might be. I think that could be really challenging for us and a big start. So yeah, it's just more of a comment than a question.
Yeah. The researchers of that project also actually basically aimed that. Their goal was to bring some problems that we like when we think about very like universal or big problems. Sometimes it's difficult to comprehend them, and bringing such problems to your back door really works. And this climate does not exist. You can literally transform anywhere on Google Maps, Google Street View, with the effects of climate change. So I think it's also good for, in this sense, advocacy campaigns as well. And this is also not the only project. I think MIT created a similar project, and it shows how it aimed to raise awareness about Syrian conflict and Syrian civil war, and it showed how cities torn up with civil war would look like with deepfakes. And you can transform any city, be that Tokyo, I don't know, Berlin, your city basically would look like if it had a like civil war torn up city. And so they also aim to show that, look, this if it happens to you, this would be the case. So in that sense, I also find it quite useful, actually.
Yeah, I find that it's something new for me, the deepfake team, but it was very interesting. There, that's one something new. Thank you, and presentation.
My pleasure.
Now, Walter, the floor is yours. We now have degrees, that online and on-site. There is very nice example of how they teaching environment. And you also have a 5D.
So, hi everyone, we are After. This is After, and I am Pauline, and we are both students from the University of Bordeaux in the study of public health. And today we are talking about the importance of group work in public health, especially in the context of e-learning. And our objective was to identify the factors that could maximize the creative potential of group work, while minimizing the challenges of distance collaboration. And for that, we use three main methods. First, we review literature on education, psychology, and management. Then we conducted semi-directed interviews with 3 teachers. And finally, we also held a focus group with 7 students. And our findings revealed several important points. Yeah, indeed, group work in academic programs are really crucial for preparing students for the professional realities, but also developing skills and encouraging integration. But in Enlight education, there are also additional challenges. Issues like being in different locations, cultural differences, and having personal and professional commitments can complicate collaboration. And we also identify some pitfalls like communication issues, time management problems, and all of the things can lead to stress and have a bad experience.
So our results are divided in 2 main parts. Firstly, the students are able to deploy strategies to adapt themselves to the difficulties they meet. They recognize that having a shared leadership or a fair task distribution is essential for the group's efficiency, such as being flexible and adaptive about the situations they meet. They also use the humor to build informal connection with other students and to make a greater cohesion within the groups. Using icebreaker or being careful about the needs and the emotional states of other students, they also avoided some misunderstandings. And on the second part, we identified several actions that teachers may set up in their teaching methods. They can, for example, set up regular meetings, interim submissions, or remind the best practice about team working to the students. Whatever, the diversity is very important in those kind of group to permit both self-development and professional growth. And as if our studies suffer of reduced sample size and time limits, it permitted to provide the tools to our educational managers to adjust their teaching methods. So our presentation is now over. So if you have any questions.
Question right away. So as I understood there, you are a student, you must be a student, so nice to have a student, now a conference as well. Maybe I start shortly if I have a chance to ask something from students. If you start to make the research, which final result is here, the poster, did you expect something else as a result?
At the beginning, this research, not for this conference, it was for our first year of master, but then our teachers proposed us to participate to the Enlight conference. So we continued to work on this subject to make this poster and present it today.
And what surprised us is that
it's not the part of the human part, how to say, do you want to help me? The fact that the humor or the moments were not important with the group. I mean, like having
The informal moments?
yeah, the informal moments
Oh, yeah.
are really important for the groups, especially when students are really far away, because on our master degree, we have some medicine coming living in Benin and other nurses living in France. So this is sometimes really complicated to work together. So yeah.
Yeah, the objective of our study was to find the different things that could permit to facilitate the group working while the students are very far. They want
really far away.
Really far away, and with the location, the culture, the language sometimes, and the time also. And yes, we identified several things that could permit students to make more cohesion inside the groups and to work more efficiently.
Well, yeah, thank you. Question, comments? Can you talk a little bit about the commitment charters? Is this to get the students to commit to sharing the workload equally? In your two suggestions there at the end, the commitment charter?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the commitment charter is we identified this document as a document that the students write about their engagement, about the projects and the groups in which they work. So
So I'm feeling more responsible for the group work. Actually, for my master degree, we co-constructed, I don't know to say it really well in English, a chart with everyone, and we do it like for one day. At the end, everyone signed up, and yeah. It's really a short.
Yeah, the objective was also to remind the students the best practice about team working and being respectful, being adaptable,
yeah.
And
yeah, I can still yeah, like this things. Be really responsible, have some respect, but also be flexible with everyone. It's really important, especially with the students who have a lot of responsibility and have personal and professional commitments.
I would suggest that these types of teamwork, and I can imagine it's really difficult by working with people who are in a totally different context, but I think it would be good to have it as a topic for an intervision session, whereby the whole group reflects on how this work affected the persons all individually. So you have the typical way of organizing intervision sessions, and I think this is an ideal topic for it. Yeah.
Clarification. Public health meters in public health. What's the public health aspect?
So the public health in France is about all the work about health, but not directly with the patients. For example, you have the nurse, the doctors, you have the pharmacian, and on the other side, you have the people in the desk, the administrators, the people who make the research in epidemiologics, in biostatistics, in informatics. Well, all of those topics are we study all those topics in the Public Health Institute of Bordeaux.
That's your master's.
Yeah, that's our master's, and we have focus group with students while doing this master degree, but only at distance. So because our master is divided into two groups, the one we're doing in Bordeaux in place, so this is us, and some other students are doing the same master degree, but at distance.
At the international.
At the national, yeah. So that's why we focus on this type of students.
Okay.
That's why. It was maybe not really clear, but we didn't have time to explain everything.
Yeah.
Is it clear now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe you want first.
Yeah, sorry. If you have something to give us, like a communication issue we had, and I like you were able to resolve things from something maybe we can understand a little bit more from this experience.
And sometimes communication issues is when you don't understand the objective of the class or the objective of the group. Sometimes the teacher gives something to do, and sometimes these students understand this and other students understand another thing. So they are all working, but they are not doing the same work, and sometimes they can make some communication issues. I don't know if I am clear.
On another hand, we have communication issues also when there are misunderstandings between students. Maybe someone will not work enough in the projects because he have a personal commitments. But me as a student, I don't know his personal commitments. So I think, oh yeah, he's not working. I'm doing all the work. So this may be the kind of communication issues that are pointed here.
You should share more information
Yeah.
between each other just to know why he or she acts like this.
Yes. Share more information and promote cohesion inside the group.
Did I understand correct that all the students involved in teamwork have also different backgrounds as with regard to previous programs they did before the public health course?
Yes.
They not just have backgrounds, they are actually working at the same time that they're doing the studies. Sometimes they're left, for example, they nurse studies, but some other students also are medicine or dentist or something like that. So it's really complicated to work while you have some professional commitment at the same time. Yes.
So because it's in public health, so did you find anything specific related to this field? I mean, so that you saw it here as a recommendation that can help just particularly for this field. So as a suggestion, so you're having a recommendation. So I'm just saying, I know it has been studied in the area of public health. So is there any of the recommendation, have you seen anything which is particularly for this group that considering the topics that they are studying?
I don't know, because public health is really a discipline when you have to work with a lot of different people. So you really need to be really flexible and patient and responsible.
More individualized, kind of related to the that can help them be, more active in the teamwork in this. It's okay. It's just I was just curious to know if because public health, it's very complex domain because at the end of the day, whatever you do as a manager, as an administrative, will directly affect the health of people. So you are deciding for the healthcare system of the country. So that's why I was wondering, considering the complexity of the healthcare, did you see something different that can help them maybe to adapt themselves better or work better? So I was just curious, so don't worry.
No, that's a good question. But
because it's the context of the study, that's why.
Yeah.
For example, what if I see in an engineering, environment, what I see might be a bit different.
Well, I think it's
the context of our master, which is which implements students from all the world that facilitate this kind of study. It's not the public health topic of our master that suggests this topic, but more this international context.
More general.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. The time is over, and thank you. I hope you enjoyed your presentation as a student here in our conference. It was nice to have you, and thank you. You are very brave. You see, I think it's much more difficult to be on site and have all the time. And in our website, just in a safe approach. So that's why you were very brave. You can have more candies in a coffee break time. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a few minutes left. If you maybe have some extra question to online presenter or something, then we can use the time. Or we can suggest that you would like to have some discussion with it. That the seventh of this. Natalie,
Oh, Natalie is over here.
Okay.
So.
We have a question for Natalie.
Yes, I do.
Yes, question for Natalie.
But let's just wait for her to join with her audio. Okay. So I'm gonna bring her.
Hi, Natalie.
Hi.
Yes.
We have an extra question for you.
Okay, super.
I'd like to hear more about the feedback of the students as far as getting frustrated with these kind of controllers and sensors. And I know working with these electronics can be quite a challenge, you know, and we face this with our. So if you have any feedback on this, that we well.
I'm sorry, I missed the first sentence, or that was actually the question.
Yeah, I wanted to hear about the frustration your students had working with these microcontrollers and this and the electronics part. Did they ever have a feedback session where they share their frustrations with this technology? Or?
Yeah, I mean, the frustration was that, you know, we prepared a lot for them. Especially the first year, we had this support from the university. So we had a full-time assistant helping prepare the course. So we had really prepared all these libraries and this sort of recipe book. And then the co-teaching situation is myself. I'm an environmental scientist. I do some with self-made sensors, but it's not my research. It's more a tool I use for my hydrology research. And then our technician, who is actually an electrician by training, and then he's repurposed himself as an environmental science technician. So what happened, and there's also a little bit of a linguistic divide, because my first language is English and his first language is Swiss German. And so it made it so the students really so they really appreciated that I don't know. So we have very different pedagogical frameworks too. He's teaching from this electrical engineering, very technician approach. And I'm teaching from this, let's think together, group work, let's work together, let's collaborate, come up with interesting questions, point of view. So then what happened, and I guess it's a pro and a con, is that the students go to Peter quickly with all their technical questions, and then he just throws himself at resolving their problem. Whereas if they had come to me, I would have put it back on them, right? I would have said, oh, you have this problem, let's figure it out together, take a step back, what could be? And so, I mean, it set up the situation where I think they expected. So it's not an ideal pedagogical approach, because they sort of expected us to solve their problems, and the teaching goal would be that they, in this process, they learn more to solve their own problems. And where I saw that happening more with the learning journals, I think were key to turning it more towards that independent problem solving, because then at the end of whenever they did the learning journal, the prompt was something along the lines of write what you learned today, what worked well, what didn't work well, and what you would do differently tomorrow. And that worked really well, I think, to stimulate that independence and problem solving. Then we also had a troubleshooting session. And Peter presented that, our technician, and he presented it very technically what troubleshooting is. And I think next time we're going to have it more like a role-playing game where we have 5 scenarios set up around the room, figure it with classic problems that are missing. You know, the library is loaded wrong, there's the wrong sensor attached, the wrong port is used, there's maybe 2 wires crossed or something like that, to give them to make it kind of like a fun game that they can play to figure out the problem, instead of it always being their individual problem, which is, I think, more emotional than if they came up with this project, then it doesn't work, then they kind of want to switch plans instead of just solving it. Whereas if it's somebody else's problem, it's easier to do it in a non-emotional or less invested way to solve the problem. So those are some thoughts. I don't know if that directly.
I love the role playing. The role playing is great. Yeah, great idea. Thank you. It was very insightful.
And then thank you for all here at your home and here in our classroom. And let's make final applause. We have a chance to chat a little bit. The next room. Copies, waiting, and then you can choose the last place where you like to be in this conference. And in the evening, probably you can have a museum. The university is very rich. We have many museums, and now you can see one of them. And I think it's worth visit, so you can enjoy. I hope you enjoy the dinner and the museum as well. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for our technical team as well.
Yes.